Good morrow to you lovely people. I have brought you here today to show you a part of the Sonic series. It is a show in which I explain my thoughts and opinions on every significant game in the series. To be more specific, here are the video games that are being covered. It is time for Sonic and the Black Knight today, so allow me to escort you through the mystical land of the United Kingdom. Tally-ho! Sonic and the Black Knight. What a tragic game this one is. Being the sequel to the controversial Secret Rings, it's no wonder people assume it's basically the same situation. I see so many people lump both Storybook games together and say that both are terrible games with sloppy controls, bad mechanics, and boring levels. However, as with so many things in this series, this is not the full picture. Instead of doing the same thing again with Black Knight, Sonic Team saw the complaints with Secret Rings and addressed them, whilst keeping the general structure of the original game intact. People look back on this title fondly, and of course, I think the game is genuinely really good. It's got flaws, quite a few, but there's a clear attempt made here to appease fans of the franchise in many ways. This entry was the last title before a drastic shift in tone and style happened for the series, so it almost feels like a fitting end of an era, which I'll explain to you why that is right now. Sonic and the Black Knight is goddamn awesome, and here's why. Black Knight is a good example of how so little can change so much, as one of the biggest problems with Secret Rings was the control scheme. Most, if not all, major basic controls were delegated to the Wii Remote motion controls, and that made the experience far more frustrating than it should have been. What this game does differently is use both the Wii Remote and the nunchuck for the controls, and it feels so much better. The moment I entered the first level, I felt such a huge feeling of relief that the control stick was what moved you. It sort of made Secret Rings even worse to think about. Obviously, there are aspects of that game I do really enjoy, so I won't attempt to dog on it for this entire time. Let's just focus on what Black Knight does right, such as how it utilizes motion controls instead. It's still on the Wii, of course, you can't not use them. What this game does is make your attacks require the swings of the remote, emulating how Sonic swings his sword in the game. Oh yeah, Sonic has a sword and it's badass, you'll get used to it. It doesn't work like Skyward Sword, where the way you swing it changes the attacks you perform. It's more like how Twilight Princess on the Wii made swinging the Wii Remote just do the attacks like they work everywhere else. And honestly, it works really well. I adore using motion controls when they're done right, and this way of doing it works super well most of the time. It's obviously not airtight. The game pauses randomly for some reason, the animations sometimes take too long to actually connect an attack, and some reaction-based elements are much more challenging. But running around the levels, effortlessly swinging your blade, defeating foes along the way, feels so cool. When it's working, it makes for some of the coolest feeling Sonic gameplay out there. Who wouldn't want to swing a sword at the speed Sonic runs at? In terms of the level design, it still utilizes the auto-runner setup that Secret Rings did, but it's far more cinematic and open in comparison. Secret Rings has a lot of indoor locations, and the outdoor areas didn't leave much in terms of scope. They still look and are really cool, but Black Knight's areas feel much more alive and grand to me. This does come at the cost of them feeling less memorable and distinct, however, as the theming isn't as strong. There's a lot of grass, a lot of castle, a bunch of cave, and not much else. Nothing has that what the heck factor that areas like Dinosaur Jungle or Pirate Storm have, which is a shame. This also leaves me with not really anything to say about the levels, as they all play very similar. The mission structure is also taken from Secret Rings, leaving me with even less to say individually. Again, however, this isn't to say that they're all bad, as I have a ton of fun in them. Let's do a brief overview of each area, and how much I like them, huh? Let's go! Misty Lake is a wonderful first area, introducing the atmosphere and gameplay brilliantly. It's got good drama, good set pieces, a fun time overall. Camelot Castle is awesome, going through tons of areas you'd expect to see. The Grand Bridge, the underground sewers, you shoot ballistas at various giant statues, it's all nice. Deep Woods has some cool moments of riding the horse carriage, and the general atmosphere is wonderful. Titanic Plain is kinda forgettable, unfortunately. It's just a big field, and that's that. There are these huge carriages you explore here and there, but it's not enough to make me think about it a lot. Crystal Cave has some pretty cool moments, but it's overshadowed by other locations in my mind, sadly. Molten Mine is absolutely one of the coolest locations in the game, with its wonderful volcano aesthetic, incredible set pieces, and thrilling music. Past this area, we've got what are basically harder versions of all previous areas thanks to how the game is structured, so I'll be even more brief here. Knight's Passage is super dramatic. I love how intense it can get. Shrouded Forest has one of the most memorable aesthetics of the game to me, thanks to the vastly different colour scheme. The Cauldron is basically what if we made Molten Mine more intense and dramatic, and it still works. Great Megalith is a vastly improved Titanic plane, thanks to it taking place at nighttime. Finally, Dragon's Lair is a cooler crystal cave, so it naturally feels more memorable, but it still doesn't do enough for me. And that's all of them. As you can tell, I still really like all these areas, despite their somewhat generic theming. Each area has some good missions, some bad missions of course, but there's not enough bad ones to make me dislike the game as a whole. There are still a few other aspects I still need to mention about the gameplay however, so let's get into it. First things first, the bosses. These are all quite weird and very difficult to understand. On a first playthrough, you'll probably end up waggling all over until the fight ends because of how weird they play, but there is a formula to them which you can figure out. All fights have this moment where you have to swing the remote as fast as you can when the tell shows up, and only when the tell appears. It's far more difficult to do these kinds of QTEs with motion controls, but man does it feel good to perform. I'd say the King Arthur fights are the better ones here as it's more clear what to do, and each Round Table Knight fight is okay. Same thing with the dragon fights. There's a lot of mechanics and ideas this game has, but doesn't really use to their full potential. For instance, the Blacksmith. You can talk to the Blacksmith before a mission to add some equipment, check your stats, and craft weapons. This didn't really need to be added. I'm glad it's here, it adds more depth, but I really only equipped some decent stuff and never looked back. There are also different playstyles, but they really only change how Sonic plays to the other playable characters. Oh damn, the other playable characters! Sir Lancelot, Shadow, Sir Gawain, Knuckles, and Sir Percival, Blaze, are all playable after the second half of the game begins, and again, it's nice to have them, I just don't want to play as them. None of them feel better to play than Sonic, which I would expect, but in a game like this, I just don't think other playable characters like this make sense. You also collect a series of items after every level, with a mechanic of points limiting the amount you can grab. It's quite fun to be fair, I like the system a lot, and I'm just amazed at how many items there are in the first place. Look at this! Oh, also, there's a morality system. Kind of. Basically, depending on how honourable your actions as a knight are, you get different symbols on your title card at the end of each level. These aren't just there for show either, as some skills become locked away if you have too many bad titles. It's such a weird thing for this kind of game to have, but I kinda love it. It makes harming townspeople feel so much worse, as you're actively penalised for doing so. It's not the end of the world if you do it accidentally, the game is still great fun anyway. It's just an added sense of realism that makes this game feel alive. And that is where I think I'll leave the gameplay of Black Knight. This game is far from perfect, I think I've made that very, very clear. But when this game is good, it feels really good. Would it play better with no motion controls at all? Of course, let's not kid ourselves here. With motion controls, however, it elevates the experience of playing the game in its own unique way that's really only replicated by other Wii games like the Galaxy games. That's what makes this game memorable in a good way. It plays differently, yet is still fun. Well, this game has good gameplay but not out of its world, so how is it elevated this high in the ranking? Well, let me introduce you to what is by far the greatest aspect of the game, and ranks among the best in the franchise. Sonic and the Black Knight has what is by far the greatest story the Sonic series has ever told. I have no problems with how each character is presented, the messages the game tells the player, the presentation of said story, and anything else in between. Secret Rings had a super solid story, don't get me wrong, but this game pushes the boundaries of what Sonic can tell its audience to the absolute extreme, and I am so happy about that. I especially love how deceptively simple it is too. Games like Shadow the Hedgehog, 06, Forces, they all tried to tell these super complicated stories with lots of things going on, but they all somewhat fall flat in their own unique ways. Black Knight takes a simple approach, whilst throwing twists and turns your way you wouldn't expect otherwise. For this analysis, I'll give a brief synopsis on what the game sets up towards the beginning, then go over the characters, and finally touch on the ending, which will probably get its own segment. Let's begin. The opening cutscene for this game is one of the coolest the franchise has seen. We see a young wizard being chased by this ginormous, intimidating king in shining armor before eventually surrounding her. The wizard begins a summoning spell, which then... in comes Sonic the Hedgehog out of nowhere, hyperfixated on his chili dogs no less. Sonic begins to gather a lay of the land before chowing down and destroying literally everyone surrounding her. The king and Sonic have a stare down, right up until the wizard grabs him and teleports them away. The king then travels to his knights to get them to search for the duo, ending this cutscene brilliantly. Where do I even begin here? The bait and switch at the beginning is always hilarious, Sonic is cocky but knows exactly who his target is, and the reveal of the Knights of the Round Table is super cool. It sets up the story wonderfully, whilst also leaving the odd breadcrumb or two about what's to come. I love it! I guess I should also quickly clarify on the presentation before we continue, as there are a few things I need to cover about that. Firstly, most cutscenes take a very similar approach to Secret Rings in terms of presentation, in that they are like storybooks, hence the name of the series itself. I think they improved on that game a ton, however, as they are structured more like animatics instead of comic strips. The characters move more, there's a lot more effects utilized, and the art itself is simply a lot better in my opinion. They managed to make these feel not like a budgeting thing, especially considering the CGI cutscenes throughout the really important moments, but a wonderful, riveting way of telling the story. I love it. Speaking of CGI, however, there are a lot more of those cutscenes throughout the game, but they are a lot shorter than the ones we got in Secret Rings outside of the opening. I do prefer this, however, as it makes the impactful moments hit a lot more, and sometimes less is more, you know? So, yeah, I love the art of the cutscenes in this game, and I wouldn't change it for the world. Back to the main plot. Sonic's landed in the mystical world of England, ruled by King Arthur, and the woman introduces herself as Merlina the Wizard. It seems that the king became obsessed with the immortality that the scabbard of Excalibur bestows, leading to him plunging this land into chaos. To defeat King Arthur, despite the whole immortality thing, Sonic must use the power of the sacred sword Caliburn, who can talk by the way, he's a real yapper, alongside obtaining the 3 sacred swords from the Knights of the Round Table to be able to defeat King Arthur and save the land. Simple, see? As always, of course, the characters elevate this game to a status none has ever seen before, so let's cover them. There is a heck of a lot to talk about with Sonic, and his greatest moments I do want to save for later, so let's cover the more subtle ways this interpretation of the character is one of, if not, the greatest in my eyes. For instance, the opening cutscene. Once Sonic shows up, he's as cocky as always, but immediately gets the situation within seconds and effortlessly deals with it. Even when he's being taken away by Merlina and sees his remaining chili dog fly away, he shouts in agony over that instead of anything else, which is so charming. When he learns that King Arthur is plunging the world into chaos, he exclaims that it's like Halloween all year long, before Merlina says that no one will probably be there for it. This shows at this early point, he's still quite brash and just follows what he hears without considering too many other options. One of my favourite moments, however, is when Sonic is about to pull Caliburn out of the stone, and Merlina states that he will forever be seen as the worst of knights because of the near regicide. All Sonic says in response, however, is,
"Guess I can't be the hero every time."
Showing how he does what he feels is right, no matter what other people may think of his actions. He's been told that killing the king will save the world, and he feels that's better than letting it fall into chaos, so he'll do whatever it takes to keep his promise. His brash nature is still shown off with his interactions with Caliburn the sword though, so let's cover him now. It's shocking how much personality they put into this sword, as he attempts to act as a strict mentor to Sonic. They argue a lot, call each other names, but it feels genuine and they grow to respect each other more as the game goes on. Caliburn tries to prove the importance of acting like a knight to Sonic, but it's proved as the game goes on that acting noble and chivalrous is not what a knight should be about. Sonic leads characters through their arcs in this story, and Caliburn is a good example of that. Plus, he's pretty funny on his own, especially paired with the visual gag of a sword bouncing around. The Knights of the Round Table are all brilliant additions that add a ton to the progression of the story. They do the same thing as some characters in Secret Rings, where they look like Sonic characters but are separate people. Each encounter shows their dedication towards King Arthur, and shows how Sonic completely destroys the definition of a knight to them. Unfortunately, there's no interaction with Sir Lancelot after his defeat, so we can't see his thoughts on Sonic's actions, but the other two have very interesting discussions that progress the themes of the story wonderfully. Sir Gawain, after his defeat, feels humiliated to lose to an apprentice knight, and takes his sword to his neck, attempting to stop being alive. Yeah. Sonic, naturally, is confused at this act, to which Gawain states that a knight who fails their king is no knight at all. Sonic then replies with,
Isn't there more to being a knight than just serving a king? Huh?
This is one of the most important lines in the game to me, in terms of the overall message, as it basically asks, is the role you are given in this world all that you really are? Remember this, it's hella important for the future. Finally, Sir Percival, who gets the most respectful conversation between the two. She introduces herself as a servant of King Arthur, and Sonic introduces himself as a knight with no master, except the wind that blows free. Percival thinks for a second, then begins the battle, not after calling Sonic a Knight of the Wind. The wind in this story is clearly representative of freedom, which is really what Sonic's been all about since the beginning. Sonic has the freedom to make his own decisions due to not being under a tyrant such as King Arthur, but the Knights of the Round Table do not. After Percival's defeat, she either falls unintentionally or intentionally into the lava. I'm inclined to think the latter because of Sir Gawain's plight, but either way, Sonic saves her in the nick of time. He states that Whim is his other master, and Caliburn finally gains respect for Sonic, calling him Sir Sonic, Knight of the Wind. This is more so a way to remind the player of the more explicit questions the game presented before with Gawain, but it's still compelling and entertaining to watch despite that. In conclusion, the Knights of the Round Table complete this ensemble cast wonderfully, and add a lot to the game's overall message. That is all the significant characters described. There are others, such as the Blacksmith and Nemu, the Lady of the Lake, but they are there to move the plot along instead of telling the viewer something. That doesn't mean they're bad, of course, I still really enjoy their inclusions, and they do help to fill out the roster to a solid collection of characters. Well, guess it's time to defeat King Arthur now and finish the game. Oh, that's it? Wow, the game just ends, man. Surely this can't be all the game has to offer, right? Wait, what's this?
What the?
King Arthur disappears into a cloud of black smoke, similarly to all the other monsters, which is very suspicious. Only the scabbard is left, so Sonic picks it up and takes it to Merlina. The Knights of the Round Table surround Merlina soon after, who explains that the King Arthur they were following was an illusion concocted by her grandfather. Sonic enters the scene soon after, and gives the scabbard to Merlina, wondering why the king dissipated. It turns out, there was never any King Arthur, and with scabbard in hand, Merlina reveals her true intentions. To erase her grandfather's greatest mistake, and make this kingdom last forever, no matter the cost.
Sonic, get back!
So, surprise surprise, Merlina was a twist villain all along, and you've only beaten half of the game! Now, it's difficult to do a twist villain like this correctly, as seen in many Disney movies of the 2010s for instance, but this one works wonders for so many reasons. Firstly, it's actually surprising. The game hides any suspicion towards her true intentions really well, whilst never making this reveal feel like an ass-pull. Secondly, there are hints towards this reveal, despite its surprising nature. There are scenes where Merlina acts differently or asks some strange questions, such as this scene. She spaces out of a conversation and puts her focus onto this flower she finds. She asks why flowers bloom, knowing they are destined to wither. Their time of beauty is short-lived, she states, before the flower withers in her hand. We'll come back to this later, it's imperative to her themes and messages. So yeah, this villain reveal is wonderfully executed and— oh god, the world is crumbling as we speak! There's this hype-as-heck scene of Sonic and the other knights locking in and dashing away from the castle to safety, and it's just as cool as it sounds. Once they make it to safety, the knights drown in sorrow over their fallen kingdom, wondering what to do next. Of course, however, the Knight of the Wind gives them confidence to never give up, showing his free nature to all three of them together. He even mocks their chivalry as it's proved to be fruitless in these trying times. He even asks the same question he asked Gawain in his defeat, man, like, chef's kiss. The Lady of the Lake then emerges and explains that they can form a barrier around the castle using the sacred swords, allowing for the power to be trapped for a time. Sonic will then jump in and deal with the situation once this is complete, much to the dismay of the other knights. This begins the second half of the game, with the more challenging levels and the other playable characters. Each knight has their own unique plaque that appears once they reach their respective barrier seal. Lancelot states,
"This stone is but part of the ring that sealeth the Dark Hollow."
Basically just stating its function. Dark Hollow is a name that intimidates Lancelot, however, which is interesting. Gawain states,
"When the sacred sword pierces stone, so shall return the power."
Gawain wonders about Excalibur, wondering why we never saw the actual sword. We only saw the scabbard for some reason, which is very strange. Percival for some reason doesn't have one, it's weird, but the others were at least introspective in some way. Anyways, Sonic seals his barrier finally, and the barriers don't work. The dark powers of Merlina somehow overpowered, worrying Ninu. Sonic ain't stopping what he's promised though, as he makes his way through the Dark Hollow with Caliburn in hand, beginning one of, if not, the greatest cutscene in Sonic history. Sonic confronts Merlina, the Dark Queen, wondering why she would do all of this in the first place. Why would she plunge the kingdom into darkness knowing that's exactly what Sonic and her were trying to stop? Well, she explains that she knows that the kingdom helmed by King Arthur will fall. Lancelot and Gawain start to grow apart, and King Arthur is executed by his son Mordred, who then leaves. Arthur established the British Empire in Arthurian folklore, presumably expecting it to be a never-ending land, but that's simply not true. It will not last, and nothing went right with the Arthur created by Merlin, Merlina's grandfather. Not very subtle, I know. Excalibur's scabbard will allow Merlina to create an everlasting kingdom, exactly as Arthur planned, and she represents this power with a familiar sight.
Creating a kingdom that never ends.
This flower, the very same one she became distracted by in a previous, unassuming cutscene, at least from the research I've taken, is an orange carnation. Now, each color of a carnation flower represents a different emotion or feeling, but an orange one represents desire, enthusiasm, and a fascination. The flower in the previous cutscene wilted away soon after it was plucked, but this one does not. In that cutscene, she's pondering about why flowers bloom, knowing they will wilt. This is Merlina showing off her power to create eternity, representing it through her desire for that power. For the rest of the cutscene, she's holding the flower too, perfectly showcasing how her desires are on full display now. Her desire and fascination with never-ending life is present every time she is near a flower, and it is always this specific kind of flower. Genius visual storytelling here, folks, and we're nowhere near finished with this cutscene. Sonic, rightfully, is baffled at this notion of eternity, and exclaimed, "What good is a world that goes on forever?" Merlina states that her sorrow is so great that it leads her down this path. Sonic doesn't understand this train of thought at all, and begins to attack. He immediately gets knocked down, but gets right back up, only to be knocked down again. Eventually, Caliburn is sliced into two, only enraging Sonic even more in this fight. He keeps going and going, but can't keep up. Blow after blow, hit after hit he takes, and nothing stops him. The Knight of the Round Table and the Lady of the Lake shout to him through their powers, begging him to stop, knowing it's a fruitless endeavor, but Sonic never lets up. After all, a knight never flees his foe. Gawain shouts at him, exclaiming that this doesn't even have anything to do with chivalry anymore. Sonic then replies, with one of his greatest lines ever uttered, perfectly showcasing everything this character represents in a tight bow.
It was never about chivalry for me. I just gotta do what I've gotta do. That's all.
With this, It Doesn't Matter version 1 blasts, his main theme, and the lost light of the sacred sword emerges. Combining all of the Round Table Knight swords into this light transforms Sonic into what is by far his coolest form to date. Excalibur Sonic is genuine perfection to me. Sonic, in a knight's garb, wielding the mythical sword Excalibur, and he's golden plated. This form represents how Sonic has shown his own optimistic view of the world, and what he chooses to do to make it all a reality. Like Merlina said early on in the story, Sonic is technically a villain in all of this from one point of view. Not only due to the regicide, of course, but because he's stopping the world from never ending. One could argue that it's better for the world to stay around forever, and another could argue that keeping the world in such a hostile state for that is far from ideal. Is it better for things to go on, or for it to have a definitive end? These are the questions the game tosses at you in these final moments, and it is genuinely masterful. It's weirdly similar to the Persona games, actually. Each one of those poses a question about an aspect of life you have to consider, and without spoiling the specifics, the final arc of Persona 5 Royal basically asks this exact same question. Well, now that we're transformed, it's time to take on the Dark Queen, Merlina. This final boss is damn awesome, man. You have to use counters, the soul gauge, or whatever it's called in this one, and whilst it is a bit jank and awkward to understand as with most other fights, it still feels just as satisfying to get through as the rest of the game. There's even dialogue within the fight going over the questions laid out previously, alongside some of the hardest lines uttered in Sonic.
The story and the world it created will come to an end. Is that what you wish?
No, it's not gonna end. My stories only end when I stop running.
Don't underestimate Excalibur Reborn. I am going to teach you the error of your ways.
Finally, that ending blow is just the cherry on top of a wonderful ending to the game. Let's put an end to the never ending.
Merlina, every world has its end. I know that's kind of sad, but that's why we gotta live life to the fullest in the time we have. At least, that's what I figure.
I had to play this moment out with no words at first, as it's by far the greatest line written for a Sonic game, period. Nothing comes close to how resonant and beautiful this moment is, and Sonic even gives Merlina an orange carnation, bringing his desire to live life to the fullest to her. The Knights of the Round Table and Nimue congratulate Sonic, and think about how the future will go, until Caliburn explains that he decides who the next king will be, Sonic. It's a pretty silly ending moment, but so damn charming and in line with the goofiness of previous moments. There's even a post-credit scene here showing how Sonic was actually telling this story as a way to postpone a date with Amy as much as possible, which is so good. A beautiful, bittersweet, and heartwarming ending to this masterpiece of a tale, Sonic and the Black Knight. And that finally concludes the story. Man, did I have a lot of analysis on this thing. I didn't think I had it in me, to be honest. I hope you think I've done a good job analysing the messages and deeper meaning here. Let's start a discussion. Let me know your thoughts if you have any to bring up, of course. I'd love to see what other people think of this tale. I can't get enough of this thing, man, and I am praying that something like this is at least attempted once again. The idea of confronting Sonic's ideologies with different, yet not necessarily wrong ones, is so good. Please do it again. Well, as usual, we are still not home free through this thing yet. It's time to talk about those really good songs, huh? The music of Sonic and the Black Knight scores every moment wonderfully in a unique style the franchise doesn't try much. There's the rockin' tunes as usual, but it's always easy to tell when a Black Knight song is playing, in a good way. There's a lot of bangers and a lot of chill tunes, so let's get into it. The Ash Grove, or the main menu theme, is a wonderfully relaxing tune, fitting the medieval England atmosphere, whilst preparing you for the adventure ahead. Misty Lake is an exceptional first area theme. It manages to fit the more melodramatic tone of the story, whilst adding a sense of wonder to the world you're exploring. Deep Woods is so cool. It's one of the most adventurous themes in the franchise, to be honest, and whilst official uploads do go on for a bit too long in my eyes, I tend to find myself lost in the wonder and excitement. Molten Mine is absolute heat, no pun intended. Being a new arrangement of a song from the game Black Dawn on the PS1 for some reason, it never felt like it came from something else, it fits that well. Knight's Passage is viscerally intense and exciting. This song plays in the level directly after the Merlina twist, so it fits that moment of dashing away from danger beautifully. The Cauldron goes all in on the drama, which makes perfect sense considering the stakes of the story at this point. It also contrasts the other new character level themes well, fitting Percival's more reserved and consistent nature. Now, there are 5 separate vocal songs in this game, all performed by Crush 40. This was actually the last game they worked on the main themes for, so it fits this new era nature of the game really well. Anyways, Night of the Wind. What a Sonic song, right? Like, this song really feels like Sonic, which I know could be said about a lot, but this one is just so cool. There's even a bunch of foreshadowing here with the lyrics such as, "By the table I command my kingdom." Just listen to this beat, man. Through the Fire plays during each Round Table Night fight, and it is damn awesome! It's kinda repetitive and doesn't follow a general structure, but it makes those fights feel so much cooler to play than they would otherwise. I wouldn't replace this for the world. Fight the Night is the King Arthur boss theme, and is basically an even more awesome version of Through the Fire. Similar problems occur in this song too, but again, the feel of this song is damn unparalleled, dude, give it a whirl. Up next is the final boss theme, With Me. This is such a fascinating song to me, as I can't really figure out what this song represents. Like, as far as I can imagine, I believe it to be a conversation between Sonic and Merlina, with Sonic taking the chorus and Merlina taking the verses. The verses have stuff like, "Do you dare to fight evil's might?" which goes so damn hard by the way, and the chorus ends with, "Turn away or face this day with me." Sonic believes Merlina should stop creating a never-ending kingdom and face a world with a horrible end, therein facing the day with him. Enough theory crafting though, listen to one of the best final boss themes in the franchise.
My eyes are filled with curiosity. You think that you have power over me.
And finally, I needed to save Live Life for last. This is, by far, the most emotionally resonant track Crush 40 has ever created for Sonic. And what a final song to give us. It basically hands us what it represents on a silver platter. No matter how hard life gets, no matter what may happen to you, hold on, hold tight, don't lose sight, and live life. Out of all the songs I've listed today, this is the one I need everyone to listen to the most. It'll hit you in the jugular like no other. There we go. This isn't an S-tier setlist to me, but it does hold some of the most beautiful, intense, dramatic, wonderful tracks the franchise has seen. I am just genuinely amazed at how much effort and passion went behind this entry, as there's so many little details and moments that wouldn't be found in a simple cash grab. 5 vocal themes, all by Crush 40, is something that's tough to come across, even for this franchise. You usually just get the one and call it a day, but they needed the best of the best to tell their story, and I couldn't be happier that they did it. Let's end this. Sonic and the Black Knight is a wonderful game, released at a heartbreaking time. Being a sequel to Secret Rings, people naturally assumed, and still assume, that the game is littered with motion control garbage and is just as unplayable, labeling it as yet another failure of this decade of Sonic. As I'm sure that you can tell from the yapping I've done today, however, this assumption makes an ass out of you and Merlina. This game is so cool. It's far from perfect, but a few easy tweaks here and a few design changes there would make this game an easy A-tier game in my eyes. It would be cool if the guys behind Project Reignition, the fan remake of Secret Rings, went and did the same for this game once that's done, but no pressure. If that's all they want to do, that's totally okay. I'm sure somebody else is already on that anyway. Back on topic, despite me not ranking this game super high, I love it wholeheartedly, and I just pray for a time when this game can be seen as more than what it is seen as now. That's it for this entry, and the next one will be our final look at a classic Sonic game. We've gotten so far now, there's no reason to stop pushing for that completed series. See you then, goodbye.